very little about the Soul King, aside from the fact that Aizen had referred to him as that thing, and he had desired to overthrow him, deeming him to be an absent god not worthy of the throne that he is sat upon. There is a lot of key information that I will be covering in this video, as I'm going to explain who the Soul King is, what life he led prior to becoming this godlike figure, and why the Shinigami are his enemies. Join me as we dive into some shocking revelations and information that will forever change the way that you look at the Soul Society, the 5 great noble families, and the leader of the Shinigami Ichibe. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Despite the fact that we were introduced to the concept of the Soul King as early as chapter 223, we don't really get our first glimpse of this character until much later on in chapter 519. From the vague silhouette that we see of him, he appears to be a fully intact humanoid figure, but later when we properly see him, it is apparent that the Soul King is a limbless, living corpse. He is held captive within a crystallized structure. The silhouette of the Soul King that we initially see with his form intact may have been an attempt by Kubo to subtly convey to us that once upon a time the Soul King did in fact have an intact body, but something had happened which led to him losing his limbs and becoming imprisoned. This of course is really subtle, and it would be hard to pick up on if you don't know some additional information about the Soul King's past that we learn from the Can't Be Your Own World light novels, which I will be covering later on in this video. When it comes to big reveals, Kubo loves to keep things vague, and the Soul King was no exception to this rule. Prior to his formal introduction, I know that I was eagerly looking forward to seeing an all-powerful figure who could wipe out anyone with the flick of his finger. My expectations were totally subverted once I had read the 1000-Year Blood War arc and realized that the Soul King is the exact opposite of what I had expected him to be. I thought he was going to be this demanding, authoritative figure who strictly governs the Bleach world, but he had turned out to be nothing more than a silent, lifeless ruler. It is no wonder that Aizen had described the throne of the Soul King as vacant, since there is nobody who is actually in control of the realms that exist within Bleach. Before the 1000-Year Blood War arc, we find out that at some point Aizen had come to learn the truth about the Soul King. We never really find out how he had learned this key character-defining information, which was the catalyst for him deciding to overthrow the Soul King. Similarly to Aizen, Urahara had also learnt about the truth pertaining to the Soul King, and the two of them refer to the Soul King as either that thing or it. This in some way is their way of showing their disgust towards him. Urahara chooses to do so covertly, while Aizen is overtly expressive when it comes to his feelings about the Soul King. Especially before he is defeated, he fails to understand why Urahara accepts the current status quo and does nothing to bring about a change. Whatever truth that they know about the Soul King was pivotal enough for Aizen to decide that he needs to be overthrown, and for Urahara to feel helpless enough to accept things the way that they are. The Soul King is the ruler of the world of the living, Hueco and the Soul Society. He is safely held within the royal palace, which is guarded by his elite squad, the Zero Division, that is led by none other than Ichibe. Like I have mentioned, despite being humanoid in appearance, he is missing both of his arms and legs. He has dark hair, with the most striking feature of his appearance being his piercing eyes, which appear to have multiple black irises. He of course is sealed away in a strange structure which is propped into the air by 4 wires within his throne room, where he permanently resides for all eternity. When he is first mentioned within chapter 223, we learn that the Soul King does not interfere with the governing of the Soul Society. Only a handful of Shinigami have ever actually seen him, and he is an important figure that everyone within the Soul Society respects and admires, despite him being absent from their lives. The Soul King serves to maintain the flow of souls coming in and out of the Soul Society, ensuring that the 3 separate realms remain stable. Without the Soul King, the Soul Society, Hueco and the human world would all begin to collapse into each other, becoming one realm. This is what the main antagonist of the 1000-Year Blood War arc had desired to accomplish. He wanted to collapse the worlds into one, creating a singular reality, which no longer has the concept of death, thus eliminating the fear of it. Yhwach and Aizen both had a goal that was linked to the Soul King, and both of them felt shame or humiliation for his existence. Yhwach's desire was more personal, since he is in fact the son of the Soul King. He concluded that his father was forced to live a life of eternal humiliation after what the Shinigami had done to him. His desire to kill the Soul King was so strong that it had flowed through the blood of every other Quincy, as they too cannot accept his existence. The Bleach manga keeps things vague, as we don't ever learn if the Soul King did anything wrong, or if it was the Soul King who had been wronged himself. Let's now dive into all of the information that we learn about him from the Can't Be Your Own World light novels, which reveal critical information about his origins, his life prior to becoming the Soul King, and what role the Shinigami and the 5 great noble families had played in humiliating him. At a much earlier point in time, the Bleach world was not split into 3 realms. There only existed a singular primordial world that was inhabited by souls. Eventually, some of these souls would transform into hollows and begin devouring the other inhabitants. This continued to be the case until the birth of a special soul, who would later go on to become the Soul King. The Soul King was born into a rough world filled with hollows. He was gifted with incredible power which allowed him to protect other souls by completely destroying the hollows that were preying upon them. Thanks to the Soul King's efforts, the number of hollows was drastically reduced and the world became more stable. However, it did not stop the birth of more hollows, so a solution was then devised by a group of 5 powerful individuals who had worked together to betray the Soul King and bring about a new structure for reality. They enlisted the help of one of their subordinates, Ichibe, to ambush the Soul King. They ended up dismembering his limbs and trapping him within a crystal structure. They had taken the vast power of the Soul King for themselves, as well as using his power to split reality into 3 separate realms. So a new world was born, giving rise to the ongoing cycle of life and death that Yhwach had despised so much. Now, when the Soul King was ambushed and captured, it is said that he did not resist against the 5 powerful beings. However, they did not take the Soul King's lack of resistance as compliance with their plans. So for safe measures, ensuring that the Soul King would not turn on them, they had ended up tearing off both of his arms, carving out his heart, mutilating his organs, and removing his legs before they had trapped him in a prison which suspended his life. He was now stuck in a state where he is neither alive or dead. He was forced to endure this humiliating existence for millions of years, that is until he was killed by Ichigo during the 1000-year Blood War arc. We learned that the 5 beings who had devised the plan to trap the Soul King were in fact the ancestors to the 5 great noble families. Each of these 5 will go on to head the separate 5 noble families, and the accomplice to all of their plans would be Ichibe, who is now the leader of the Shinigami and the leader of the Zero Division. They had ironically tasked him to protect the Soul King, who he had helped to ambush and mutilate. The dismembered limbs and organs of the Soul King would be reincarnated into different souls over time. They were scattered across the 3 different realms. Some small fragments of the Soul King had ended up within the souls of several humans, thus allowing them to become Fullbringers, while larger parts were given to different Shinigami and Quincy. The right arm of the Soul King was fused to the body of Ukitake. The left arm of the Soul King was given to Pernida, who served Yhwach as a Quincy, while other smaller fragments of the Soul King were given to individuals like Rangiku, who would go on to have her fragment stolen by Aizen, who ended up feeding it to his Hokyoku. With what we know of the Soul King, it is safe to assume that he was the originator of all Quincy, Shinigami, and Fullbring powers. He was a once great transcendent being who existed long before the Soul Society. He used his power to rid the world of hollows and did what he could to protect all souls. His selfless efforts were rewarded by the ancestors of the 5 great noble families, who did the unthinkable by mutilating him and creating a new reality with the cycle of reincarnation. What's worse is that Ichibe was assigned to watch over the Soul King by the ancestors of the 5 great noble families. They did whatever they could to maintain this new status quo. Nobody but a select few had known of this secret. The Shinigami within the Soul Society fight for a world that was built upon a grave sin. Some have even compared this to the biblical original sin, which resulted in Adam and Eve being banished from the gardens of heaven. You could say that the Soul King was a blessing that was sent down to help the souls who were being constantly devoured by the hollows. But a select few were still unsatisfied and had conspired to work together in an attempt to create an even better world by disgracing the one who had given them a chance to live with peace once more. The 5 great noble families as well as Ichibe are responsible for the original sin that occurs within Bleach. This sin echoes throughout the Bleach story via the motives of Aizen and Yhwach. Aizen wanted the throne of the Soul King for himself, while Yhwach wanted to end his father's humiliating existence. Both motives stemming from their refusal to accept the existence of the Soul King as the linchpin of reality. All of this information about the Soul King is critical to understanding the lore of the Bleach world, and I am baffled as to why it was never included within the manga. It makes you understand and link together the motives of Aizen, Yhwach, and even Ginjo to a singular event, which is the original sin. I really hope that this stuff is included within the new Bleach anime via an anime adaptation of the Can't Be Your Own World light novel novels, as it would silence a lot of people who claim that Bleach has little to no world building. So we have now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What did you think about the sickening plan of the 5 great noble families and Ichibe? Do you have more sympathy for the Soul King, or do you find his existence to be unbearable like Aizen and Yhwach? Let me know all of your thoughts about the Soul King in the comments. I want to know if you learned something new about the Bleach world, and if things make much more sense now after learning the events of the original sin told within the Can't For Your Own World novels. Now lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.